welcome to Kate on Ju's Book Reviews, the place where we shine a spotlight on indie books and their authors. Today I'm going to be talking about The Famine Witch by Stephen Black. That is available now through Quill and Crow Publishing House and also Amazon. So if you like my review, then I encourage you to go and buy it. So let's proceed. So The Famine Witch is set during the Great Famine in the 1600s in Ireland. We are following Maggie Malone, a 19-year-old, and her little brother Jinx, who's about 8, and how they traverse the streets, essentially trying to keep each other alive, warm, fed, not killed, because not only are there the usual dangers that come from sort of living in poverty, but also we have a serial killer known as Bloody Hands, and he is also terrorizing the street, killing women, and we find out a bit about him quite early on. He comes back every 200 years, kills 6 women, and then not to be heard of for another 200 years. So it's all very, very mysterious. And then we have the titular Famine Witch herself. She is called Fionnuala, and she has a really interesting journey. I don't want to say too much. This is a non-spoiler review, but her journey and the way that we see her develop comes from a very, very human place. But the way that it develops just ends up creating a lot of thought-provoking questions and senses of morality, and when is vengeance ever okay, and when is it justice and when is it vengeance. So yeah, it's a really, really interesting story. The Great Famine is a really big part of this story. It's almost like another character, because it really is more than the backdrop in terms of the settings, but it affects all the characters' motivations. It affects how people interact, their thought processes, what happens when people are under that kind of stress. And then we also have a really great look at faith and religion and organized religion. It's not preachy. It's not done in a way that force feeds you one way or other. It just takes very, very human, understandable and very vulnerable characters, puts them in certain situations and lets you decide. I think that this is a very positive book. I don't think it's one where you'll come away feeling full of doom and gloom, or like, oh gosh, humans are awful, or oh gosh, this is terrible. But it doesn't hold away from those things either, which I really respect. One of the really good things that I found about this book is how Stephen Black is able to write these very genuine female characters. Woman myself, I found that there was something in every single one of these female characters that I could either relate to, or I could understand, or I knew someone who, that character reminded me of someone, that I know personally. And nothing came off tropesy, nothing came off stereotypical. These are really full-fledged characters, and that goes for all of Black's characters. That goes for the side characters. That goes for characters that turn up for one chapter and we never see them again, or they are main hitters. Every single aspect of these characters are clearly thought about. They are clearly researched, and we see into every single one of them, no matter what, how fleeting their appearances may be. The setting is this very rich setting of Belfast in the 1600s. You can hear all of the noise and smell all of the smells, not pleasant, and you can really just get this sense of this world, which is a real place. These events did happen with the Great Famine, and people were dying of disease, and people were being traded off and fleeing towns and looking for salvation. In amongst this, though, we have this supernatural story about witches, and as someone who is very spiritual, and I would say that if I were to have some sort of faith or religion, I don't really like using that term, but you know, some sort of thing like that. Mine would be paganism, and I found that this had a really good understanding of what Wiccan paganism is about in terms of the balance of things, and there's not one good thing, there's not one bad thing, it's all, everything comes in together. And I think that that was done really well, because there are characters that we really don't like, but they're not just villains. There's always something motivating them. There's always something that we see that is other than just, we're evil and I'm gonna do this, and you know, there's always something. And I think that's what makes this book really, really interesting, is that character dynamic, and the way that it's written is beautiful. And I mean, this cover is stunning, absolutely gorgeous. And on my Instagram and TikTok social media, I put out my opening of this, and you can see the cover inside that's hidden. There's a beautiful emblem on the front. So yeah, I think that there is a lot that this book has to say. I think that it's not about one thing, it's multifaceted, truly. And I think if you enjoy strong characters and good plot progression and just very interesting dynamics, I think that you're going to get a lot from this book. We've got witches, serial killers, history, religion. We've got great characters. We've got children. We've got adults. We've got the elderly. We have family trees almost. You see all these women go from, you know, descendant to descendant to descendant, and you see this whole line of these very strong women that have this thing in common. And I think that there is just so much that this book has to say. So yeah, as I said, you can get it from Quill and Crow Publishing House, or you can also get it on Amazon. It is out now. I implore you to go and buy it. It's available paperback, hardback, and Kindle. So however you read, it's there. And yeah, just go buy it. It is a 5 out of 5 for me, and I can't wait to, let me know if you buy it. Let me know what you think. Drop it in the comments, or get on my social media pages. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram at kate.orangejuice.review. Wait, no, you can try that again. You can find it at kate.orangejuice.book.reviews. It'll all be in the episode blurbs. And then you can also get me on Facebook at just Kate Orange Juice Book Reviews, and you can email me at kateorangejuicebookreviews@outlook.com. Next episode, I will be reviewing Ashen Heart by Sabrina Vorman, and there will be a follow-up interview with that also. Thank you very much for tuning in, and the interview with Stephen Black will also be uploaded, unless you are listening as a podcast, in which case just stay tuned and you'll hear it right now. Hi, and welcome to Kate Orange Juice Book Reviews. And today I am joined by author Stephen Black, author of The Famine Witch. Hi, Stephen. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm good, Kate. Thank you for having me on. Great to be here.
Of course, yeah, no, that's it's my pleasure, and thank you so much for coming on. So obviously we're going to be talking about your book that's coming out for release this week, but I just wanted our listeners and watchers and audience to just get to know you a little bit. So if you can just tell people a bit about yourself and how you got into writing, things like that, that would be lovely.
Sure. My name's Stephen Black. I live in Northern Ireland, originally from County Tyrone, but I now live outside Belfast with my wife Vanilla. Got 3 kids, aged between 17 and 21 now, and a 13-year-old border terrier. So that's our sort of domestic setup. With regards to writing, I've always been really interested in, creative fiction, reading and writing. I dabbled with it when I was younger, but after university, when I got a job and had other responsibilities, got married, had kids,
Yep.
I didn't really, there was, I was very career focused for a while. I didn't really have much time for creative reading and writing. And it was really only in my 40s, believe it or not, that I decided to write again. It was really my father's death. I lost my father in 2010 to prostate cancer, and
Oh, how awful.
he died at 64, very young, had just retired. And I learned afterwards that he had always wanted to write a book, and he'd actually started writing the book longhand. So it kind of spurred me on and went, well, almost for him as much as for anyone, I decided, well, I'm going to start writing. So I started life as a blogger. I had a couple of blogs on WordPress, and one of them, Fractured Faith, proved quite popular. Before I had about 10,000 followers on it, and I got into the habit of writing every day. And then one day I decided, I was sitting down and I got the name Kirkwood Scott in my head, and Kirkwood Scott became the character in my first book, Skelly Square, and it kind of went from there. And I've written 3 books in the Kirkwood Scott series with other publishers. Decided to do something a bit darker, which led to the Famine Witch. Built up a relationship with Colin Crow and Cassandra, who's the owner of Colin Crow, and
Shout out to Cassandra.
queried the Cassandra's my boss, so I have to be nice to her. Queried the Famine Witch for her, and thankfully she liked it and took it from there. And now it's been published in 4 days' time. So it's been quite a journey, but it's been a good journey.
Oh no, I mean, that's an amazing story about how you got into it and things, and carrying on that work for your dad and that dream for you and your dad. It's so inspiring. It's really beautiful. I'm so glad that you've been able to see these dreams come true, and congratulations on the Famine Witch. It's a brilliant book. I was talking to Sabrina, another Quill and Crow author, last night, and she hasn't read it, and I was like, you're gonna love it.
I'm gonna have to speak to her about that.
But I'm like, you're gonna love it, and I was telling her, like, spoiler free, but like a little bit about it, like reasons why I think she'll love it, and she was like, I'm so excited. She's like, yeah, I'm definitely gonna read that. So yeah, I'll tell her that she's due a telling off.
Well, I'm a big fan of Sabrina's books as well. The Blood Coven series, Colin Crow. I've done a bit of editorial work with that, and she's a fantastic writer, great storyteller. And if you thought her first book was exciting, wait until you see the next one, which is out.
Oh yeah, I was the beta on that. So it's brilliant. I've read it a couple of times now, and its release is very exciting. I'm very excited to see how this series progresses, for sure. But we are not here to talk about Sabrina. We are here to talk about you and your book. Screw Sabrina. Psh, who needs her? And so basically, your novel Famine Witch. This is going to be spoiler free. Obviously, it's not out yet. I would hate to ruin anything for anybody. So I'm trying to get my authors that I have on to say a bit about the book, so I don't reveal too much, and then if too much is revealed, it's on you. So if you'd like to give a very brief sort of synopsis about the Famine Witch and what it's about.
Yeah, it's a dark historical fantasy. It's set in Belfast in 1847, when the town as it was then was gripped by the Great Famine that swept across the island of Ireland. And it tells the story of a young woman called Maggie Malone and her 8-year-old brother Jinx as they try to survive in the Belfast slums. Maggie lost her mum the year before she died. Their father has hit the drink and is basically an absent father. They're really struggling to get by day, surviving, worrying about where the next meal is going to come from. as if that wasn't bad enough, they then get involved in a ancient feud between two dark entities.
As you
One
do.
being the Famine Witch,
Yeah.
as you do.
You know,
One being the Famine
getting a
Witch
few in my time.
who lives on the Black Mountain overlooking Belfast, and the other one is a very nasty character called Bloody Hands, who appears in Belfast every 200 years and goes around butchering people. So there's a bit of a turf war going on between the Famine Witch and Bloody Hands as to who will rule Belfast and the island of Ireland. And as it transpires, the only person that can save the day is Maggie. And I'll stop there, because if I go on, I am going into spoiler territory.
No. I think that's a good preface. It touches on a lot of different things there, and I'm quite confident in the questions that I have coming up that I'm not going to spoil anything. So great, good. That's really all that question is about. It's just checking for me. So one of the things that I really just admired about this book is, and this is not to say that male writers can't write female women. There are plenty of them out there. There are also plenty of men who cannot write female characters. You, sir, are not one of them. You wrote these books. Honestly, there were times where I forgot that it had a male author, because these characters, a lot of them are female. A lot of the perspectives that we are reading, because there's several POVs, point of views, and not all of them are women, but a good chunk of them are women, and they're not even remotely the same type of character. They are also vastly different, all at different times of their lives, and each one of them is just so well-rounded, believable, relatable in some way. I mean, even the more, I don't want to say villainous, but like definitely the darker characters, there's still an element of humanity, or at least that's where they started out. You can understand why they got to where they are, and those things. And first off, just brilliant writing. But like when it comes to writing female characters, where do you get that inspiration from? Is it from your family? Is it just from other things you've read? Like where does that skill and that understanding come from?
Well, firstly, thank you for your kind words. I live in a house with 3 women, so
that'll do it.
My son has deserted me and went to university, so I'm vastly outnumbered now. How dare he? So I've picked up quite a bit from them. I've said this before, and it's not intentional, but I would say about 90% of the fiction I read is by women authors.
Oh, that helps.
I just find, I don't know why, but I just find women authors, when it comes to telling tales that are raw about injustice and vengeance and the whole feminine rage issue. I think women authors are, Sabrina's an example, and there's other women authors at Quill and Crow I'm massive fans of, like Lydia V. Russell, Catherine Ferns, Cassandra herself, and the ancient ones. There's other indie authors, I really admire, like Brooklyn Dean. I don't know if you've read any Brooklyn stuff.
My gosh, yeah, no, fantastic.
Yeah, big fan of Brooklyn's. And also I read a lot of Irish women authors, Sally Rooney, Louise O'Neill, Niamh Dolan, Deirdre Sullivan, who's an Irish fantasy writer.
Oh, I don't know her. I have to check her out.
Another one, Dixon Rule, another big Irish indie author. So I just gravitate towards women's voices and women's experiences. So I would have to guess that's what helps me when I write woman characters. I don't find it difficult. The main character in the Famine Witch, Maggie, the Famine Witch herself, Fanula, other characters like Annabelle and Nell, and in the Kirkwood Scott series, 2 of the main characters are women, Meredith and Harley. So I don't know. I it's just something that comes easily to me, and it's a
Yeah.
massive compliment that other women like what I'm doing and understand what I'm doing, because there's nothing worse than a man telling a woman how she should feel and getting it horribly wrong. And I know there's a lot of
You
authors
get
out
it.
there who do that.
This guy gets it. He gets it.
I've been well taught. I'm well trained.
Oh no, well, excellent job. No, like I mean, as I said, I mean, there are plenty of male writers who write women well. That's not to say that there isn't at all, but it is very refreshing when, like, it's not just like one or two characters here and there. Like there is like a plethora of really strong, really, but also very vulnerable, and flawed women, but at the same time they're very authentic, and the women's experience, I think, not to get too much about this side, but like regardless of whether it's now 200 years ago, 400 years ago, there's still a lot of the same types of battles that we have to fight. It may not be that we have to defend ourselves against witchcraft or anything, but there's still like a lot of things. Well, we don't get drowned or anything for it, though, thankfully, she says with a pagan tattoo on her chest. I just feel like it can't be the easiest thing from someone who doesn't have that personal perspective of a gender. Like the other way around, like I wouldn't necessarily know how to write a male character because I've not had that mentality or those experiences. I mean, I could write like a very stereotypical, very, like cartoonized male character, but getting an authentic and relatable for other men type of character, like that would be very difficult for me. So, when a male author does that very well, like it always like, and I would imagine that it has to come from somewhere, whether it's growing up with a lot of women or just being surrounded by a lot of women, or as you say, reading a lot of women-based literature. And I think, write what you know, and if what you're drawn to are female-driven stories or women-written stories, then that makes a lot of sense, and that's all to your strength, 100%. So one of the other things that plays a big role in this book is religion. And what I got from the book is that it's not anti-faith at all. Like, I think that actually there's a lot of aspects of this, which is, believing in something, while it can be confusing and while it can be misguided, is not necessarily a bad thing at its core. But when it comes down to being misguided and maybe organized religion and things like that, there seems to be like a lot of I don't want to say commentary, but definitely like an overall kind of mood that organized religious and things can be a very damaging thing, for lack of a better term. Now, obviously you're Irish and stuff, and Irish is very well known for having a lot of religious history and being a typically very religious country. So I was just wondering like where you were coming from with that, and I don't want to necessarily be asking or prying about your religious views, but just in terms of the way that it comes through in the story, like, was that something that was important to you, or is that something that just happened naturally and was just authentic to the tale?
No, it's a theme I'm interested in, the whole faith versus religion. I would describe myself as pro-faith and anti-organized religion.
Yeah.
Growing up in Northern Ireland during the Troubles, I've seen the best and the worst of well, it's a more diverse society now, but in my day, you're either Catholic or Protestant.
Yeah.
And I was brought up in the Protestant community. I went to a Presbyterian church. I went to Sunday school. I learned all my Bible stories, and that just was the way it was. And I went to a school that was 100% Protestants, because there was that's the way the education system was then. There wasn't integrated education, and I was 18 and at university before I had my first Catholic friend.
Wow.
So it was, looking back, a very strange upbringing, but at the time it was perfectly normal. You were raised that the other side were the enemy because, you know, the IRA were out murdering police officers and soldiers and members of the public. And on the other side, the Catholic community were going, well, there's loyalists, paramilitary groups out doing exactly the same thing. There were no winners until the peace process. So I grew up in that society. I've went through the church system. I'm not a church goer. I believe there's something out there. I have a faith that there's something beyond. I'm not quite sure what or who, but I do have a faith, and the Famine Witch is really focusing on, you know, those with faith, be it Maggie and Jinx, her working class Catholic kids, or their friend Annabelle, who's the daughter of the nasty clergyman in the story. You know, they're all about, you know, Annabelle's brought up. Annabelle to me is what, you know, Jesus would have wanted people to do. You know, she's kind. She wants to help the poor and destitute. She runs a soup kitchen.
Yeah.
You know, she does everything out of love. Whereas her father, the Reverend Edgar, is a hypocrite. He stands in the pulpit and preaches the gospel, and then the rest of the week he's just not a very nice man. He's all about greed and self-betterment, and, you know, he doesn't love thy neighbor. He's the antithesis of that. It's money and prestige and power. So I wanted in the Famine Witch to paint the good side and the bad side, and people then can make up their own minds.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that is, I mean, I'm not religious. I would say I'm probably more spiritual, with like a tendency for pagan beliefs and things. I am not anti-religion per se, but I think that, same as you, I think that faith and religion can be a wonderful thing when it's done in the right way. But when it comes to organized religion and using religion as a business drive, and essentially what, you know, we've got in the clergyman that you mentioned, he's using it for self-betterment. He's using it to create hate. He's using it to create a hype over something that he doesn't understand and doesn't feel is right, when he doesn't look any further than that. He doesn't look any deeper than that. And that's where I'm like, I don't want anything to do with that, you know. But I think what this book does, I think what's really good about this book is that it, as you say, it does allow you to make those conclusions for yourself. And that's what I got from it, where I said, like, it's not about saying you can't believe in God, or God is this, or anything like that. It's just like, hey, just be a good person and follow a faith, and whether that's this faith or this faith, just don't be an arsehole. You know?
Yep.
And I think that is a really good message, obviously. And I really like how this book does have that mentality of, it's not trying to tell you what religion is right or not, but just practice the faith, you know, practice the teachings that come with these religions, and don't be an arsehole.
That's a good moral for life.
I mean, that's how I live my life, is trying just not to be an arsehole. I mean, I am an arsehole. I'm failing at it terribly, but
well, at least you're aware of it, and that's
exactly, yeah. Just whether I choose to do something about it or not. No, just joking. So I again, one of the things about this book is that regardless of whether you hate them, you love them, there is not a single character in here that isn't something to sink your teeth into, you know. Like there's even side characters there, you see that there's a history to them. They're full people. Like, you can tell that when you're writing them, that you had a clear idea of who they were and where they fit into the story and where they fit into this town and the type of characters that they were. There was no character here that felt half-assed, you know, or not thought about. And one of my favorite characters is in it for like a scene, and that's Jack Kelly, the pub owner. And I just wondered, this is just for me, really. I want to know, is there any chance of like a spin-off novel or anything about Jack Kelly. Like, he was just one of these characters that for me was just like one of those people that has a past, but he's a firm but fair guy, and he's an honest guy, and but don't mess with him, you know. And like, it's the kind of character that I really love, like just that kind of like rugged sort of tough guy, but is a bit of a softie as well when it comes to the right people. And yeah, I would, it's sort of alluded to in the book that, you know, he has a bit of a past, and he has sort of like a bit of a darker side to him. Yeah, and I just wondered, is there any chance of us exploring that anymore in maybe another novel?
There wasn't, but you've put the idea in my head now.
Yeah, yeah, great. You don't ask, you don't get.
He is an interesting character. There was actually a bit of debate about Cassandra, whether or not we were going to keep him in the book, but I fought hard for him, and thankfully he was retained. And I just love writing him because he's just, you know, that's what Belfast publicans were like back then. You know, their pub was their kingdom, and God help anyone who misbehaved on it. They would soon be chucked out, and you know, he's afraid of nobody. You know, he stands up to bullies. He's a hard man, as you said, but he's a fair man.
Yeah.
And who knows? I have half an idea about a sequel to the Famine Witch.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Him or one of his descendants may well make a reappearance.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm very glad that Jack Kelly got.
Just for
Thanks. I appreciate it. I'm so glad Jack Kelly got kept in. He's
that's fantastic, because I mean, that's great to hear that, because it makes writing a character like him worthwhile. You know, people are gonna, you know, love the witch or love Maggie or love Jinx, but you know, the fact that, you know, a little secondary character like Jack, that means a lot to me, that you know, you enjoyed reading his chapter.
Yeah, no, I thought he was great. Like, he really stood out. I had a lot of fun reading him, and yeah, I was a bit sad that that's all that he got, but I'm very glad. It was a nice little kind of peephole into his character.
Would you go to his pub for a night out?
I absolutely would go to his pub for a night out. Are you joking? Oh my gosh, yeah. I'd be there like chugging them back with the rest of them. Because although I sound very well, I've been told that I sound quite posh, and I'm English. I'm Scottish heritage, so you know, I've got that Celtic blood in me.
I'm sure Jack would make you welcome.
Yeah, well, you know, I'll maybe keep the Scottish side. I'll definitely keep the English side of it down. But yeah, I'd 100% go out to his pub. Absolutely. I've danced on bars and like get everyone up and everything and spending their money. 100%. Love it. So okay, I have to mention this, which was when I was because I did a little bit of research on you before here, and you mentioned earlier that your wife is called Fionnuala.
Fionnuala, yes.
Which is the same name as the Famine Witch, and I wondered just tell me a little bit about
that. When I was writing the Famine Witch, there was I turned around to my wife and I went, you know, she has to have it. You know, she wasn't born the Famine Witch; she became the Famine Witch. She started life as someone else. So I went, what am I going to call her? What am I going to call her? And she went right away, call her Fionnuala.
So it's your wife's suggestion.
It was my wife's suggestion. I'm not suggesting that my wife is an, you know, nasty, wicked witch. It was her idea, because I often joke, my daughters and my wife and my mother-in-law, they can be in 3 different places and they'll all have the same thought, or they'll think of something and they'll go, oh, one of them will ring the other and go, oh, guess what I was thinking about? And they'll go, I was thinking about exactly the same thing. And I jokingly call them the coven. There's like 3 generations of women, and
it's like
there's something there. They have this connection. They have, whether it's telepathic or spiritual or something else, there's something there that connects them all. So when I thought about it, I went, yeah, Fionnuala. You know, it's Irish. It means something to me. When people like you come to interview me, I have a story to tell.
No, yeah, definitely. It's a great story. I really quite like how it's it's, you know, it is like the three feminine as well, you know, with the maiden, the matron, and not to call your mother-in-law a crone, but like but you know what I mean, like those
trouble
three.
if you say that.
No, don't tell her, don't tell her. I didn't mean it like that, but you know, the three stages of womanhood and things. I love that. And yeah, and it's funny because in my family, before my nan passed, you'd have me, my mum, and her, so my matriarchal grandmother, and my dad would just be like, just you're exactly the same person, you know. You're like, this is exactly like how it's all going to progress. And we, and we typically just cackled. But yeah, no, I do love that. While talking about the Famine Witch, obviously, her as a character goes on there's a big character arc with her. As you say, she doesn't start out the Famine Witch, and actually she starts out very sympathetic and a very good, giving person. And unfortunately, that does become her comeuppance with that. I was just wondering, like, when you started out this book, did you sort of have a very clear path of how she was going to progress as a character, or was that just something that happened that developed naturally as it went on, and you were like, oh, actually I wasn't going to do that, but actually this works, you know?
I would be a complete pantser. When I start writing the story, I have no idea how it's going to end, and the characters basically tell me what's going to happen. I don't know about yourself, your own writing style, Kate, but it's like rolling out a carpet. Somebody could tell me, can you write a synopsis? And I'd sit and stare at a blank screen for hours. The only way I have to write to generate ideas, and it's whilst I'm writing that the next page comes into my head and so on. If you know, I know some people do these like massive outlines and mind maps and plots. I can't do that. I have a rough idea. I sit down, I start typing, and
you're in the zone.
It goes where it goes. So when I start the Famine Witch, I had no idea, you know, what other than she was a witch who had a big chip on her shoulder.
Most witches do.
No idea.
I've heard.
That's witches do. I had no idea where the story was going.
Oh, that's cool though. I think that's a very organic way of writing, and I know a few people who adopt that method and just let it kind of flow from them. And yeah, I think I really do like that, and I think as well it kind of takes the pressure off them. I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but I would imagine that doing it the other way, it doesn't allow for so much sort of creative flow. Like if you kind of got these very sort of secured ideas that you've thought out, you know, if the story does take you elsewhere.
It works for a lot of people, and respect to them, but it doesn't work for me.
Fair enough. So one of the other characters, as you mentioned before, Bloody Hands. So he's a really interesting one, and I know that he comes from Irish folklore. He's right. Okay, you're going to have to help me with this pronunciation. I really tried hard. It's Avatar. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm not an Irish speaker myself. I had to look. I would say Abhartak.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. I was completely.
And basically, it's Irish. It's the Irish word for dwarf.
Yeah, I thought that the B and an H made a V sound.
Well, that's my understanding.
But
well,
it's an Irish
speaker on. You need to get an Irish speaker on your show.
I'll look into that. Okay, cool. Well, at least while I'm getting it wrong, like you're getting it wrong, so that's fine. But yeah, it's obviously as the story progresses, even if you're not familiar with that folklore, it does become apparent at one point that he does kind of come from folklore. I won't say too much about that, but like, did that character come from any other than the folklore, the Irish folklore? Was that character inspired by anything else, any other characters or historical figures or anything like that?
Well, basically, I learned of the legend of obviously as a fan of Gothic fiction, Bram Stoker's Dracula would be one of the great classics I loved. Mm-hmm. And it's when I was doing a bit of reading about Stoker that I realized that when he was researching Dracula and making his notes, uh, historians subsequently found in the notes that he'd researched the Abhartak, and some will say that it was one of the influences behind Dracula.
Oh wow,
And
okay.
as I've said before, the Irish invented vampires, and because of that, the modern day vampire. And I'm sticking to that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really interesting because, you know, saying about Dracula being inspired by this, and obviously like and it's kind of like a full circle almost, isn't it? Like Dracula is inspired by this type of folklore creature, and then you've been inspired by that and also Dracula, but famously Dracula docks into the town of Whitby, and Whitby is very famous for its witches. So it's a real nice kind of,
Yeah.
you know, all the thing. And even more of a full circle, I am the descendant for the Witch of Whitby. So
Well, Whitby's a place I'd love to visit because
oh, it's
it
fantastic.
just strikes me as this very eerie yet beautiful place. And it's on my bucket list one day to go to Whitby.
Oh yeah, you should. It's great. They have it's really retained its like history. And it's still like cobblestones everywhere, and you know, they've got this big massive hill, and you've got the 99 steps that lead down to hell and things, and beautiful cemeteries. Yeah, you'll love it. And also their fish and chips, fantastic. Ooh. Yeah, chef's kiss, really good fish and chips. So there you go, is my recommendation. So yeah, with obviously this story, as you mentioned before, it's a lot of it sort of, I won't even call it a backstory, it's very much intertwined with these characters in the main plot. You've got the, you know, the entwining of the Great Famine that ran across Ireland in the 18th century. And again, I was wondering whether that was something that you knew from the get-go, or whether that was something that you maybe had these ideas for characters and things and thought, oh, actually that might tie in. And how important is that to you? Because I love that. I think it really creates a grounding for this very fantastical story. And I think that, you know, if you you could have this story without it being about the famine, but it adds something extra. And I was just wondering what your process was in terms of incorporating that, and how important incorporating history and things is to your work.
Well, I'm a bit of a history nerd. My degree's in modern history. I love history, and you know, I read a lot of history. My first books, the Kirkwood Scott Chronicles, they're kind of set. There's a bit of time travel between modern day Belfast and the Napoleonic Wars period. So I did a lot of research around Wellington and Napoleon and Waterloo for those books. And historical fantasies just comes to me as my natural sort of genre. I had an idea about a witch on a mountain, and it just popped in my head. Well, why not set it during the famine? I knew a bit about the famine, but I didn't know a lot about how the famine affected, as it was then, the north of Ireland. There's a bit of a misconception that it was really the southern part of Ireland that suffered most, whereas the province of Ulster in the north was quite prosperous. Belfast was one of the great industrial towns at the time during Victoria's reign, and you know, it was a very thriving community. But Belfast and the surrounding countryside were hit hard by the famine as well. And it's only when I began to research that I realised how hard Belfast was hit. Because the potato crop failed, a lot of people living in rural communities were forced to move, whether by choice or they were evicted from their plots, and they navigated towards Belfast. So you had a great influx of rural people that really exacerbated the problems. They were homeless, they were on the streets, there wasn't enough food, cramped conditions, so lack of sanitation, clean water. So it all kind of snowballed and became the perfect storm. So, and I got a feeling that, you know, what would bring the Famine Witch back, because she's so full with hate and anger and spite. She needed to come back at a time of great unrest and division. And I don't think there was a more unsettling or tragic period in Irish history than the famine. So it just made sense that it was set during that period.
Oh no, and I think it is the perfect setting for it. It just, everything works. So yeah, no, excellent. So lastly, if your readers were to take anything away from the Famine Witch, what would you like them to take away from this book?
I'd like them to take away that Stephen Black's a fantastic author and you should go and buy all his books.
Yes, I concur. Agreed.
I think the Famine Witch, it's a very dark story. In many ways, it's a tragic story. Some of the characters don't have very good endings, but I always like to sprinkle a little bit of humor, even if it's very dark humor. And without ruining the ending, I'd like to say, even in the darkest times, there's hope.
Yeah, I love the ending. By the way, I thought it was perfect.
And love shines through. And the most powerful relationship in the book is the relationship between Maggie and Jinx. And no matter what happens, they can't be separated or broken by anything, be it famine, disease, death. It doesn't matter. They have that bond. So that's probably I'd like people to close the book and not be all like doom and gloom. That's the most depressing book I've ever read in my life.
Yeah.
Read, yeah, it was a sad story, but there's a little bit of hope at the end.
Yeah, I would agree. I definitely didn't come away feeling like all I wanted to do was sit in a room and listen to Coldplay.
Well, nobody wants to do that.
Yeah, no one wants to do that. No one's that sad.
Although my wife and daughter are going to see them in the summer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my wife and daughter are going to see Coldplay, and I'm going to see Taylor Swift with my other daughter. So
you got tickets for Taylor Swift? Oh my gosh! Wow.
I know. Well, it basically bankrupted me, but we did.
Yeah, I mean, definitely make the most of those tickets. I mean, if you need someone to chaperone your daughter, if you want to take the night off, head down the pub.
No,
I will volunteer. Like, I don't mind.
My daughter Hannah has converted me into a Swiftie. So
how good is her folklore album?
Unfortunately, I'll be there.
I love her folklore album.
Oh yeah, fantastic. And that's what I was interviewed yesterday, and I was talking about, she's such a great lyricist. Her lyrics are fantastic, and I'd love her to write a book. I'd love her to write like a novel. I think
that would be wonderful. I can imagine the kind of thing, and I am absolutely here for it. We'll petition it. We'll put it up on, what's the thing, like change.org or something or other. Or petition it. Lovely. Well, I mean, that's basically it. So thank you so much. The Famine Witch is available for purchase through Quill and Crow Publishing, and it is also available on Amazon. So easy peasy lemon squeezy. And I just encourage anyone who is a fan of folklore and horror, and anyone who roots for like an underdog, and and loves all of the kind of things that come with that, just go check this book out. It is so wonderfully written. It is so enthralling, and the characters are just so enriching. It's just, yes, go buy it. Everyone go buy it. And although you have blessed me with a digital copy, I actually put in a pre-order today. So I want it on my shelf. I want it. It's a beautiful, beautiful
cover. Can I say, Quill and Crow do beautiful books. So,
oh my God, don't they?
Their physical paperbacks and hardcover books are beautiful, and
they are stunning.
I look forward to seeing it on your shelf.
Yes, in my reels and things. No, 100%. So no, thank you so much for coming on today. I really just cannot wait for everyone to get their hands on this book. So yeah, that is out on the 24th of January. Go everyone, buy it. So yeah, if you want to follow me on my social medias, then I can be followed on Instagram and TikTok under kate.orangejuice.book-reviews. On Facebook, it's Kate Orangejuice Book Reviews. And if you want to email me, my email address is kateorangejuicebookreviews @outlook.com. Stephen, is there anything else you'd like to plug before you go? Any social medias, anything else at all? Go for it.
Very quickly, if you'd like to listen to my daily ramblings, you'll find me on Twitter at Stephen with a PH, Stephen RB4, Instagram, Threads, and Facebook. I'm Stephen Black Author, and I'm also an editor. I edit at Quill and Crow, and I also have my own little editing business called Black Thoughts Editorial Services. So you can find Black Thoughts on Twitter and Instagram as well. So I'm everywhere.
Yeah, and I follow Quill and Crow, and I also follow Black Thoughts on my Instagram. So if you are on my Instagram and you can't find it, you'll find it under my following. So yeah, no, brilliant. Thank you very much. Well, thank you so much, Stephen, for coming on today. Really, really excellent talking to you, and I am sure we will speak again.
I hope so.
It's a sequel with Jack Kelly.
Yes. Well, I've went public now. I have to, and I'm a man of my word, so I have to write the story.
It's on the internet, so yeah, you're bound.
If it's on the internet, it's real.
It's real, exactly. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for today.